Hello and welcome to today's Cloud Megacast event produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is David Davis and I'm excited to be your moderator for today's event. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to join us on this Cloud Megacast. On today's event, you'll hear from Cohesity, Veeam with HPE, Zerto, and Druva. We've got a great show lined up for you today. You'll see live demos, you'll hear about some great presentations, and some really innovative cloud solutions. Now, before we get started, we've got a little bit of housekeeping that we need to cover. First off, on today's event, we'll be giving out a lot of prizes. This is a Megacast, and on the Megacast, we give out a ton of prizes. In just a moment, you'll learn exactly what those prizes are and how you can be eligible for the prize drawings. I also want to point out that we have questions for you throughout the event. We'll be popping up some poll questions, and we would appreciate you answering those questions. You do that right inside the slides window. Now, we also want your questions. We want this to be a very educational event. This event is not a smackdown between the presenters here today. This is an educational event. We've asked the presenters to remain positive and focus on what differentiates their product from the other solutions presented here today or the other solutions out in the marketplace. And we highly encourage your questions. Use the questions and answers box throughout the event to ask all the questions you have about the technologies being presented and the specific products and how they work. We'll be doing our best to answer all those questions during the event. We also want this to be a social event. I'll be monitoring Twitter throughout the event. I'll be replying to questions on Twitter and retweeting comments about the event and probably following just about anyone who tweets with the hashtag, which I'll mention in just a moment. And by the way, you can also tweet directly from your console. On the console there, using the Twitter widget, you can tweet and the hashtag will be automatically appended. Now, the first time you use this, it will perform the standard Twitter authorization. And finally, resources. We have a number of handouts available from today's presenters. If you look at the questions and answers box just to the right of where it says questions and answers, it says handouts. If you click on the handouts tab, you'll see all the different handouts that are available for download on today's event. Now, I said we have some amazing prizes, and we do. We're giving out 5 Microsoft Surface Pro 6 tablets. These are the hybrid tablets. These are really valuable and really cool. I wish I had one myself, but we'll be giving out 5 of these today on the event. We'll also be giving out 4 of the $500 Amazon gift cards. That, my friends, is a ton of prizes. So how do you become eligible for these prize drawings? Well, you must be present on the live event to be eligible for the prize drawings that we'll be conducting throughout the event. Winners have the option to make a donation to a selected charity. Grand prize winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media. That is a requirement of the U.S. federal government. We will reach out to prize winners via email after the event, and the full prize terms and conditions are available on our website, events.actualtechmedia.com. If you go to the handouts tab and scroll to the bottom, you'll find that URL in there and just click on the prize terms and conditions. Now, through the Megacast and EcoCast event series, we have given out thousands and thousands of dollars away to the selected charities you see on the screen here. If you win a prize and you say, you know what, I got enough technology already, I would just love to help someone less fortunate, we would love to help you do that by donating your prize value to charity. Now, social media, the hashtag is CloudMegacast. I'll be monitoring that hashtag. Today's event is produced by Actual Tech Media. We will be tweeting about the event. We would love to have you follow us to learn more about our upcoming events and what's going on in enterprise tech. And you can follow me, David M. Davis. I talk about cloud computing and enterprise technology just about every day on Twitter, and I would love to talk with you on Twitter as well. Now, you can subscribe to everything we do at Actual Tech Media over on YouTube, also on Facebook, and our 10 on Tech podcast in the iTunes Store. Now, before we start our event today with some poll questions and then the introduction of our very first presenter, I want to do a little bit of level setting here when it comes to cloud solutions. Maybe there are some of you out there who haven't spent a lot of time exploring the benefits of hybrid cloud and how hybrid cloud might help you. So I wanted to talk about that just very briefly for a moment. By leveraging cloud solutions, you gain infinite scalability, meaning no longer do you have perhaps a capacity issue storing all of your backup data on premises. The cloud is infinitely scalable. You can put as much data into the cloud as you want. And it offers your business and your IT organization tremendous agility. So you can do things you never thought possible before. Spin up hundreds or thousands of new virtual machines, for example, in seconds. You can store terabytes or petabytes of data. You can bring up new applications faster than ever before. And this has the possibility of making your company much more competitive than ever before. The cloud is also elastic. You can consume as much as you'd like and then reduce that or shrink that on demand. You also pay as you go. So it's a utility-based pricing model. You pay for what you consume. If you don't consume it that month, then you don't have to pay. And there's low or no capital expenditure. So in IT, many times we're the last to know about a new application or business system that needs to be brought up. And we have to say, oh, by the way, we're going to need $50,000 for new storage, new servers, application licensing. We might have to hire a new administrator, and that's going to cost even more. With the hybrid cloud, you simply pay as you consume. And then there are advanced features that are included. For example, high availability. In the past, we might have had to purchase an additional license for high availability for our storage or for disaster recovery for our applications. All of these things could be included in the hybrid cloud solution that you select. And the goal of all of this, of course, is to make us in IT so much more efficient and hopefully turn us into technology heroes in our company. I mean, I wouldn't be here talking about and speaking about and writing about cloud computing if I didn't think that it had the ability to turn us as technology professionals into the technology heroes of our company. Now, on today's event, you'll hear from Cohesity, Veeam, Zerto, HPE, and Druva, and you'll learn about how their innovative cloud solutions can help to make your company more agile and hopefully turn you into the technology hero of your company. And now I've got a few poll questions to ask you. All right, first poll question we have in the slides window there is, how many people work at your company? Should be a pretty easy question to answer. I'm going to share the results of this poll question with you. I've got just 3 poll questions before I introduce our first presenter. So I would appreciate you answering that poll question, and you'll get to see how you stack up with your friends and neighbors and fellow IT pros who are on the event today as well in just a moment. All right, looks like most of the audience has voted. Let me show the results here. So 16% are at very large companies, 10,000 plus. 25% are kind of in that 100 to 500. 10% at small companies. So as you can see, real good distribution across all different sizes of enterprises and IT organizations. The second question is, what's your industry vertical? And you may need to scroll down on the right-hand side of the slide window there. As you can imagine, there's a lot of different industry verticals. So scroll down the list, and by the way, that reminds me to remind you to maximize the slide window if at all possible. You can take the corner of that slide window, you could drag it out, just like in your Windows or Mac OS operating system. You can drag out that slide window or click the maximize button on the top right-hand corner of it to make it as large as possible, because you're about to see some cool live demos here. We've got architectural diagrams, all kinds of cool stuff on today's event. All right, looks like most of you have voted on that poll. Let me share the results with you. And it looks like 23% are from technology companies, but take a look at the other ones here. 10% manufacturing, 11% healthcare, a real good distribution of K-12, local, state, federal governments, higher education, 11% finance and banking. So thank you everyone who voted on that poll. One last poll question before we kick off today's event. That is, what's your time frame for updating your existing or selecting a new cloud solution? Are you immediately looking for new solutions? That's the 0 to 6 months there, or perhaps a little bit more out in the future? I appreciate everyone responding on that poll question, and I also appreciate all of the comments that are coming in from everyone. I'm responding to those as quickly as possible. There are literally hundreds and hundreds of comments. So thank you everyone for all the great comments, and thank you for supporting today's Cloud Megacast. All right, looks like most everyone has voted on that poll. I appreciate that. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Chris Colati, Principal Technologist, also VCDX at Cohesity. Chris, are you with us?
I believe I am, David. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for kicking off today's event. I know you've got a cool demo lined up for us today. Take it away.
Awesome. Thank you. So this is actually, I think, the second Megacast this year that Cohesity's been on, and I've had the pleasure of doing most of them thus far. So I always like to start out quickly, letting people know who Cohesity is. I think there's still some people, wondering what we do and where we fit, and we are doing a lot with cloud recently. Google Cloud Next is this week, and we actually have some stuff that we announced that I'll talk about in a little bit. But as a company, we were founded in 2013 by Mohit Aaron, who also founded Nutanix. We've got a massive set of revenue growth and enterprise customers and a number of different investors. And it's a testament to Mohit's vision and how we're really starting to get more in with customers beyond data protection, right? So that's why we like being on the Cloud Megacast and some of these other cloud events that we tend to do. So there's a lot that you can read about the company. I won't dwell on that too much. I just like to make sure people know who we are and where we came from a little bit. So one of the things I want to touch on is Cohesity as a platform has a very rich ecosystem. I don't think a lot of people really know all of the things that we work with, and it's across different places, right? So when I say that, we've got data platform runs on Cisco, HP, Dell, our own boxes. We can run it in a robo on a VE environment, on a virtual edition, as well as a clustered virtual edition. And what I'm going to talk about today a little bit is the cloud edition and some of the things we do within cloud, specifically tailing on the Google Cloud Next a little bit. The demos I'll do today are within the Google Cloud platform, which I've actually kind of become a big fan of. It's fairly easy to navigate and configure a lot of the constructs within there. So it's just, for people who don't know, we do actually work across physical virtual. We do have some database connectivity. We do have direct storage integration with certain partners, and we do have a full complement of cloud connectivity options with AWS, Azure, GCP. So one of the things I think that David touched on a little bit in the video, he was talking about the hybrid cloud journey, and this is, David and I can probably attest to this from back in my VMware days, but I think this concept of hybrid cloud is still being vetted out. Everybody has a different opinion or version or vision of what it is to them. And I think, for us at Cohesity, it's a little bit of what's in the middle here, where it is backup and recovery, it is failover to the cloud, it's archive, it's DR. All of these things are things that Cohesity can do at varying levels and within different clouds. So we can't go into all of them, obviously, in 20 minutes, but I just want to put this out there and say that the applications drive the stages that customers are at. So some customers are a full software as a service or cloud native customer. They don't have any infrastructure. We can work with that. We have customers that have on-premises applications and legacy apps that they want to fail over to the cloud or migrate or just archive data to the cloud. So we fit a number of different use cases. This is a slide that we use a lot, and I haven't put all of the information in it because I really wanted to just focus on the cloud gateway aspect. So in legacy type solutions, we always see that gateways or cloud connectivity is some kind of a bolt-on, or it's typically for archive only. And for a lot of customers that are still, I don't want to use the term legacy, and there's a lot of customers that are still using backup solutions or data protection solutions that they've just had for years. So it may not necessarily be a legacy, but it's just something they've been comfortable with, that's embedded in the environment, and that's just what they have. And to get access to cloud environments, they typically have to bolt something on. One of the things we always point out about the Cohesity data platform is it's well integrated already with all the cloud providers, whether it's from an archiving perspective, a cloud tiering option. I got a quick slide that I'll talk about that in a second. But it's fully integrated. So we have various versions of the cloud APIs. I'll show that in the demo, the number of different endpoints that we can connect to for different use cases. There's really not much that you have to do as a user except supply the credentials and then configure those buckets or storage locations on the other end, depending on what you want to do. So this is actually a new slide that I grabbed the other day, and it was perfect timing because I don't think people understand or know all of the things that Cohesity has from a cloud solution perspective. So this is really the high level of it, but we do long-term retention. We do with a feature called Cloud Archive, and that's actually something I'll show today. Cloud Retrieve is simply the ability to take anything that's in that archive and bring it back to any other Cohesity appliance that you have out there in your infrastructure. So actually being able to pull that data back from the Cloud Archive location. Cloud Tier actually lets us extend the storage of the platform out to a cloud. And bear in mind, when we say cloud, it's not necessarily an actual cloud provider. It could be, we've done demos where the Cloud Archive is actually done to another Cohesity appliance using S3 protocol, which we support. So it's a little misnomer when we use the term cloud, but at the end of the day, we can tier out to another storage subsystem or something different using cloud-based operations, primarily S3. We can do something called Cloud Spin, which John Hildebrand does a lot of demos with this, where we can actually copy VMs to the cloud for test dev. We can also do replication to the cloud. And then what I'm going to also show today is native cloud data protection that we have with GCP. So you'll see a couple of these things from me today, and to give John a little plug for tomorrow, he's actually going to be doing a bunch of these demos tomorrow afternoon as well in another cloud session for another event. So this is something that I think a lot of people can relate to, and it really is around data protection being shared responsibility. There's actually been some quotes out there in the past that people have actually said you don't need to back up things in the cloud, the cloud provider does it. And I think guys like David and I have been around long enough to know better. It really is a shared responsibility in a sense where you as the customer have to take certain steps to protect your data that don't come under the SaaS provider or the infrastructure as a service provider. It doesn't even have to be SaaS, right? We're talking about just VMs running in AWS or EC2 instances or instances running in GCP. They're your responsibility, right? I don't think anybody will argue that now, but I think it's been a little bit of a progression for people to realize that. And that's where Cohesity can help. So something we actually announced this week, the announcement went out yesterday morning, the timing was actually perfect for this to kind of mention it, is we announced a Cohesity Cloud Backup Service for GCP workloads. So it's a backup as a service offering through Google that will be available to GCP customers. So they'll be able to use Cohesity's technology to back up their instances within GCP without actually having to stand up any Cohesity infrastructure themselves. So there's going to be more detail to come on this. This is something we're talking about at Google Cloud Next as well. But this was pretty exciting because it was a pretty tight partnership with Google to get this out the door. But I haven't even seen the demo yet myself, so I can't demo this today. I think this actually might be getting demoed by John tomorrow as well because he actually got some access to it. But in a nutshell, it really is a few clicks. It's something that a customer can subscribe to. They can unsubscribe from it. They can leverage it to protect their virtual machines and instances in GCP without having to add any additional infrastructure, which is kind of nice. They don't have to have a whole bunch of stuff running or necessarily any knowledge of Cohesity at that point. So, and this is something we run into that we always want to bring up to people when we're talking about cloud solutions. I think, again, this has always been a misnomer in the past, but I think, people are starting to realize it now, is that most cloud providers will have some solution available, but it might be limited. We did a session on one of the other Megacasts about Office 365 and why we developed an Office 365 solution. A lot of solutions are just pointers. They're not actual. It's not the actual data. It's using different storage tiers. A lot of vendors solutions might not take into account where the copies are located. And this is something. The last one is something I think everybody kind of forgets is some things may be free to put the data in the cloud, but it's you're going to pay to take it out. And I think that was a lot of what we saw with AWS when it first kind of started up, and people were using a lot of S3, and it didn't cost you much to get it in there, but when you started to retrieve it, then you started to pay for it. So that's it for slideware. I'll get to some of the questions at the end, and David usually does a great job helping me out coordinate those, but I'm actually going to bring up a live demo here, if it will share my screen. Oh, I have to click on it, that's why. And David, if you can let me know when you can see my screen.
I see it. Yeah, it looks good.
Awesome. So this is something people always see when I start out these demos, which is the first stop on the tour essentially is Helios. So Cohesity Helios is actually our cloud-based software as a service that manages all of your Cohesity clusters. So again, it's fitting that this is a cloud megacast because we do Helios within GCP. Once you log into Helios, you have access to all of your clusters that you've brought into it. So this is our new lab for the technology advocacy group. So you can actually see we've got a number of different Cohesity clusters, and you can probably tell by the naming which ones live in Azure and which ones live in GCP versus AWS. So from here, really quick, what's nice about this SaaS portal is a lot of these tiles are expandable. So when you have multiple clusters, you can break down the different tiles to each individual cluster without having to jump to every one of them at a glance. So it's a great dashboard. We show this to a lot of people in different demos. But for example, you can get your rolled up storage reduction, but as you look down, you can see some of these are much lower than others. Some of them are ridiculously high because of what we're running on them and the compression that's happening because there's a ton of workload. We can start to see throughputs and IOPS and other things right from this dashboard. But what I want to do is really go into the types of sources that we can protect that are and the things we can do within cloud. So to do that, I'm actually going to jump over to one of my GCP appliances. So first thing you'll notice is up here it toggled over, and there we show a little cloud next to it. And if we actually look at the cluster itself, we can see that it's running in GCP. So this, if I was to quickly go over to Google Compute Engine, what we're looking at is actually this instance right here. So this GCP instance of Cohesity is this cluster. So it's been deployed with about 7 terabytes of storage, and that's something that we can vary depending on how many nodes we deploy. But this is actually running live in GCP right now. And I can do anything across any Cohesity cluster, whether it's in the cloud or I'm going to a physical, the software platform is the same. So my sources can all be the same. So in this case, I've already got the GCP source registered. If I actually go to one of my physicals, you'll see that there's a number of other sources that are registered. And you'll notice I didn't change context, by the way. I'm actually in the sources context, and I can toggle between all 8 of these clusters without actually having to go back and click again. So very big difference, right? Our physical one's got some SQL databases, an Azure source, an AWS source. It doesn't have the GCP source in it yet, but it's a testament to how many sources we can actually do. And if we wanted to register a new source, for example, we could do hypervisor. We could actually choose anything from the VMware side, the Hyper-V side, and within cloud we can see GCP, AWS, and Azure subscriptions. So each of these has varying, slightly different connectivity options between access keys and secret keys, and we have a lot of that stuff documented. But once you've registered a source, in this case, what I'm going to show you is the native GCP backup process. So what we've also got in my compute engine is I've got 3 other instances plus a control VM that happens to be powered off running in GCP, and we've already registered this source, and I've actually pre-created a backup job for it. So I'm going to go ahead and run this job, but when we look at the protection job, we can see this is running against that GCP source, and those are those same 4 instances that are already in the backup job. But what I want to do is show how the process works. So it's actually kind of interesting in GCP, and that's actually very similar in AWS. So we actually do leverage the native cloud snapshot components. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and back this up and run it again because I want to show on the GCP side what's actually happening. So the first thing we actually do is we will start to create snapshots for each of those VMs within GCP. So you can see we've already issued the snapshot API command. And I'm not going to let this whole thing run because it takes a little bit of time for the whole process, but I'll walk you through it. We'll take the snapshot. We'll deploy a single instance of, we'll call it a proxy VM for lack of a better term. We call it a fleet instance. We actually use the term fleet in the instance name. And then what we'll do is we'll take these snaps, we'll mount those as volumes to that fleet instance, and then we'll back up the volumes via the fleet instance. And then when the whole process is said and done, we'll actually remove the snaps, we'll remove the volumes, we'll remove the fleet instance. So anything that happens during the backup process is then removed when we complete the process. So again, it's very similar in AWS. We take the snapshot, we deploy a fleet instance, we mount those, and then we can actually back up all that data. So if we look at one of the previous runs, we can actually see how long it took. But let's see, this one took, it takes about 26 minutes to complete the whole process because of the snapshotting, the mounting, the deployment of the other instance. But at the end of the day, this is using all native Google APIs or AWS APIs, if you will. So at the same time, we'll also do all of our indexing and everything else that happens within the backup job, so we can actually index everything that's on those VMs. So that's what's happening in the background, and now we could actually restore or recover any one of these VMs from any point in time that it's actually been backed up from. So the other thing I want to show quickly is Cloud Archive, which is essentially taking a storage bucket that's sitting out in Google Cloud. We can add that as what we call an external target, and from that external target, we can then use it as an archive location. So you can see here we've already pre-created an archive bucket. There's nothing in here right now. I don't think anybody's used it yet. They may have. But no, it doesn't look like there's any objects that have been created. We try to clean it up when we're done. But if I actually I'm going to go over to a physical actually. So I'm going to switch over my contacts to my physical cluster, and I'm going to go to one of my smaller protection jobs, which is this one here, which is just a small set of files on a file share. But it works the same regardless of any backup job, whether it's a view or whether it's a bunch of VMs. The difference is when I run this one now, I'm actually going to manually add the ability to archive it. And you can see here I've actually got 3 archive locations. I've got an AWS, an Azure, and a GCP that were pre-configured. And I'm just going to pick this GCP one for this one single run of this, and I'm going to tell it to retain it for a couple of weeks. And now if I do a one-off backup of that job, we'll see that it just added a copy task, right? If you had noticed, it had a hash mark, same as these other ones. So all it was doing a backup status, and we've actually added the task for copying it. And what we're going to do is actually run the backup, and you can see it's already completed. It's already copied the data out to the archive location. It's a fairly small file share, so there's not a ton of data in it, so it goes pretty quick. But you can actually see we start to log the different tasks. So we'll do the backup task, we'll have the archive task, if there's an indexing task, each of those will happen across the top here. And if we actually go over, we might actually be able to see the file structure. So there we go. We just created our Snaptree folder, our metadata folder, and what we call our Icebox folder for the data. So where this was an empty bucket, it now has some archive data in it, which we could later run a cloud retrieve operation to another Cohesity appliance. So the data is easily moved around using cloud technologies back and forth. So I'll pause there and jump back over to the Q&A window, because David's going to keep me on time, I'm sure. And let's see, what do we have over in the Q&A window? Because that's all I had for the demo pieces, to try to keep it short. But
yeah, that's cool. So Marcus was asking about data ownership in the cloud. I mean, when we put data in GCP, is that under, say, my account, or is that under Cohesity's account? How does that work?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it is all your accounts. So you own the data. It's your subscription. It's your billing. It's your project, if you will. So in the context of GCP, it uses this concept of project. So you have to have a billing account, a credit card, and all those other things. You create a project. So if you create a project and create a bucket and you archive that bucket, you'll be paying for the storage on your account. With the subscription model, I'll have to get some more information on that with the backup as a service, exactly who's paying for which components. It literally was announced yesterday, so I don't have a ton of detail on it right now. I know for a fact if it's your account and you're standing up a CE or an instance of the Cloud Edition, yeah, that's going to be on your compute bill for sure. So it's your data in your account.
Okay. And another question here, Michael's asking about Cohesity physical server backup. You might want to respond to his more technical question there, but in general, does Cohesity backup physical servers?
We actually do have an agent that can be installed on physical servers. So there, the agent itself can back up some of the data. It's a little bit different on the physical side, where primarily our customers I tend to see a lot of vSphere customers. We actually do a lot of demos at trade shows with a vSphere target, as well as we're starting to see a lot more Hyper-V, and we're starting to see some other virtualization targets. Specifically to bare metal, that's come up a couple of times, and there's some stuff that engineering is looking at to do bare metal restores. We're like most, I think, backup vendors today. We're a little bit more on the virtual side because backing up and restoring VMs is a lot easier than trying to do bare metal. So I can do some research on that and get back to Michael on that.
Okay. Another question here. Joshua's asking about integration with AWS, with IAM roles and security groups and permissions. Is that something that is configurable, or how would that work with AWS?
Yeah, it's actually everything we do is via IAM. So when you connect to an AWS instance or an AWS account as either a bucket directly, specifically for an S3 bucket for archive, or a Glacier for archive, or to AWS for backing up EC2 instances, there's a well-documented number of permissions that need to be assigned to an IAM account. So usually the way I describe it is, we use a single IAM account that we consider our service account within our environment, and that has the needed permissions to do everything from cloud archive to a backup to a restore, right? So we've set the permissions on that IAM user accordingly. And the only thing you provide when you connect, if you saw it in that screen, was the IAM user information, the ARN, the secret keys, and all that stuff. So it is tightly integrated into IAM, as well as on the GCP side. We supply a minimal amount of connectivity data, but the roles and the permissions are defined within GCP. So you still control that within the GCP context of the user, or the AWS context of the user, or the Azure context of the user. It's different for all of them. Obviously, if you've ever actually messed with all three clouds at the same time, like I've been doing the last couple of weeks, you wrap your head around one construct, and then you switch to another cloud provider, and all the constructs are different, including the IAM usage.
Okay. And which public clouds are supported today for Helios?
So Helios itself is something we run. So we actually provide that to customers. So we're supplying that as software as a service, as a SaaS offering. So nobody actually runs Helios. There is a dark site version of it for government that doesn't have access to the internet. So that if the clusters can't call home to Helios, they're isolated. We do have a version that we use with government. But the Helios itself, nobody has to stand up. It's just there, and once you have a support account with Cohesity, you connect your clusters to it. There's a toggle button that you just turn on and say, connect this to Helios, and provide your Helios credentials. As far as the clouds that we work with all three of the major clouds right now as far as archive and having a cloud edition. So we have a native cloud edition for Azure, we have a cloud edition for AWS, we have a cloud edition for GCP, so you can run the platform in all three of those clouds as the Cohesity data platform running as an instance. And then for archive, we support all three of them as well at various levels. So within GCP, for example, you can do regional, you can do cold line or near line. So all the different options are available.
Okay. And do I have to have a Cohesity cluster on site to use Helios?
No. So again, Helios being the aggregation point, we've actually got a couple customers that do a lot of it strictly in cloud editions of the platform, and they just integrate those into Helios to manage them. So Helios doesn't do anything until you actually have a cluster to connect to it, but I don't care if that cluster is physical or you're doing everything in cloud editions. It's just gives you that single I hate to use the term single pane of glass, but it gives you that aggregation of all those clusters, so you don't have to expose them to the internet, right? Or use your VPN connectivity or be logged into a specific VPN to access the UI of the cluster or to look at your jobs. So it is all secured directly to and from Helios over SSL.
Okay, nice. There's a question here. Richard's asking about pricing. What's the pricing or licensing model for Helios?
I always get that one when we do these, and most people know by the time I'm done, I'm not a sales guy. So my best response to that is get in touch with a local SE or inside sales person to talk about that. I actually, it's funny, I don't know any pricing numbers because I don't do sales.
That's okay. That's okay. And then if I wanted to use Cohesity on site to back up my on-premises infrastructure, where does that start? Like, what's the entry-level cluster I would implement for that?
Yeah, a lot of folks are going to the partners first. So HP, Cisco, or Dell. We're seeing a lot of traction on hardware partnerships. So Dell has a certified UCS chassis to work with Cohesity. HP has one. So does Dell. Or I said Dell. Cisco has UCS. It's a minimum of 3 nodes. So all of those vendors supply a hyperconverged cluster, right? So typically the chassis will go 4 nodes. There might be some dual nodes, but they'll have disk for an SSD tier and a meta tier, and then they'll have spinning disk for all the data. So they have to be certified to run the software because the way the software has the meta tier as well as the storage tier. The minimum cluster size in physical is 3. It gets a little bit different in the cloud. So, for example, you can run one instance of a cloud version, but of course, if you do run a single instance, then you did upgrades or things like that, you wouldn't have any redundancy. But it does actually work with a single instance in Azure, for example, because each Azure instance connects to a storage blob, and everything gets 12 terabytes for every instance. But Azure only charges you for the storage you use within that blob, not the provision storage. So even if you spun up three instances of Cohesity, each of them with 12 terabytes of blob storage, if you're only storing 2 terabytes across those 3, you're only ever going to pay for the 2. So in that, the costing within the cloud environments gets different because of the storage cost, the CPU costs, and all those things. So it's a fairly variable scale.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that's all the questions we have, or all the time we have for questions. There's some more technical questions there for you in the queue, Chris. You might want to get back to those and share the answers with those. We'd appreciate it. Love seeing the live demo. Thanks for being on the event today.
No problem. Thanks for having me, as always.
All right. For more information on Cohesity, visit cohesity.com. Also, check out the handout from Cohesity that's available in your console right there. If you click on the Handouts tab, Cohesity is right there at the top, the very first one. If you click on that, that'll download that to your web browser, wherever your downloads go, and you can open up that PDF from there. So it's time to give out our first set of prizes. Actually, we've got a lot of prizes today. We've got the Surface tablet and an Amazon $500 gift card. I'm just going to leave the poll question up that's on the screen right now for you to answer. If you haven't answered that question, I appreciate you answering that. The first prize winners, we have an Amazon $500 gift card going out to Malak Saad from Indiana. Congratulations, Malak from Indiana. And we have our first grand prize, the Surface tablet, going out to Thomas Gang from Maryland. Congratulations, Thomas from Maryland. We've got a lot more prizes to give away. If you aren't Thomas from Maryland or Malak from Indiana, stay tuned for those prize drawings. All right, and with that, it's time for our next presenter on today's Cloud Megacast. We are now introducing Mr. Dave Russell, Vice President of Enterprise Strategy at Veeam, and Andrew, who is a technical analyst at Veeam as well. Dave and Andrew, are you there?
You sure are.
Thanks for being on the event today. Take it away.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you. All right. So I'm Dave, and my colleague Andrew, or we affectionately refer to him as AZ, are going to take you through a little bit about Veeam and focus specifically on our cloud data management capabilities. We'll click right over this with the exception to say if you want to get a hold of us, here are our Twitter handles. I'm Backup Dave, and Andrew Zalesko. All right, so just a couple intro slides, if you will. You probably have heard of Veeam. We're originally known for protecting VMware, then Hyper-V, then physical solutions like Windows, Linux, and more recently AIX and Solaris, and Nutanix AHV as well, and offering cloud capabilities that we'll double-click on. The company's been shipping product now for 11 years. We've got a run rate of about $1 billion. That's software only. We believe sometime this quarter we'll hit 12-month trailing $1 billion mark. At current time, we've got a little over 330,000 customers around the world. That represents 18 million machines protected. In the fourth quarter of last year, we announced a commitment to expand our product development center by an additional $150 million and a pledge to hire 500 additional software developers. First quarter of this year, Insight Venture Capital came to us with an investment opportunity of $500 million, which now one of the things I get to do is actively look at merger and acquisition and ways to accelerate our vision even further and faster. If we think about a little bit about what Veeam is, we actually commissioned IDC to go and ask Veeam customers and some of our partners, what do they think is our differentiation? And the three things that stood out the most were simplicity, reliability, and flexibility. We like to have native interfaces that look exactly like what you're used to operating in, whether that's, say, a vSphere or you're used to operate in a Windows Explorer environment. You can right-click on an item and do a quick restore, which we'll go through in a little bit. Reliability, one of the great phrases we like is many of our users just use the phrase, it just works. And then lastly, flexibility. We're software defined. We actually scale out horizontally in two different ways by being able to dynamically spin up proxies for data movers and our scale-out backup repository, which AZ will touch upon. But really we want to come up with a single piece of software that is germane from the smallest of organizations, protecting perhaps just a couple of virtual machines, to the largest of enterprises, where I believe right now our largest physical account is managing over 50,000 Windows and Linux agents in addition to their VM environment. But enough of that. Let's go to the Veeam platform. From a conceptual perspective, we've got monitoring and analytics that sit atop an orchestration or an automation engine that sits atop our unified backup and replication solution. And you'll see the phrase Data Labs in there. Data Labs was Veeam's industry first capability to instant mount virtual machine images. And now we've extended that. We used to call it Virtual Labs. Now we call it Data Labs because we've optimized it for read as well as write. So we can persist those writes if you like. And we now see this as use case beyond recovery around DevOps, security, patch testing, just to name a few items. Now when we think about our APIs, we really go up, above, and below. So southbound we hook into infrastructure, but northbound we can also interface with a variety of different management platforms. And this is all with the notion around protecting cloud-based workloads, SaaS, physical, and virtual. Now, if we double-click on that a little bit, when we think cloud, we're predominantly focused on AWS, Azure, IBM Cloud, and our large ecosystem of Veeam Cloud service providers that I'll touch upon a little later. Software as a service, right now heavily focused on Office 365 and OneDrive. We got an award from Microsoft for driving the most traffic to that platform. And physical and virtual, as you can see. Now, from a management perspective, we've actually done some interesting demonstrations at both VMworld in Barcelona and Vegas, we showed a Chef and Terraform project where we can go and deploy Veeam on Amazon, running VMware, and do that all in an automated fashion. In fact, we've got a community project out in GitHub with that available. But here's just a few of our integration points. Let's double click on this. This looks like a really busy slide. You know, the interesting thing is this is not a large enterprise. This actually came out of a customer discussion. It was initially a whiteboard event that an engagement that we later put into PowerPoint format. And what it's really trying to make the point is that it doesn't take very long before the world gets very complex when we talk about cloud data management or a hybrid cloud type of deployment. So it's not uncommon for even a mid-sized organization to have some activity in AWS, probably have Office 365, still have on-prem physical capabilities. Maybe there's a AIX box still in the corner, definitely probably a Windows and some Linux machines, but increasingly heavily virtualized environment and a direction to go more and more towards the cloud. And one of the things that we see now is the desire to be able to capture or protect all of those workloads, but have portability across them, and to be able to automate that or orchestrate that is becoming increasingly vital. And in part because you may be contending with something that looks like this today, but if not, you want to have a platform that's extensible in the future to be able to have that kind of horizontal capability so that you don't end up with islands of management. Now, coming soon later this year, we will have protection for Microsoft Azure instances as well, meaning we made an acquisition at the beginning of last year, a company called N2W Software that protects Amazon or EC2 snapshots, and we'll have like capability in Amazon as well. Azure as well. So when we think of cloud capability, simplistically, we think of really to the cloud, and then from the cloud and across the cloud. And what I mean by that is, to the cloud, we all prefer backup as a service, disaster recovery as a service. We also get deployed for replication as a service. And this is really kind of more in an operational recovery kind of tier. You know, we've got data we're protecting on premises, and we're sending offsite secondary copies, or for a desire just to have ability for failover in case we're not able to have a secondary site. So pretty well understood concept, but one thing that we've just released earlier this year, and this is what we'll demonstrate in just a little bit, is now a different kind of to the cloud capability where we can, behind the scenes, unbeknownst to any end user or application, we can tier off data to object storage. We can send to Amazon or any S3 compatible or Microsoft Azure Blob or IBM Cloud Instance or anything that's S3 compatible that you may have on-site from an object storage perspective. And the real goal for doing this is optimizing resources, optimizing the investment that you've made, but also looking at ways to mitigate risk and reduce cost. We essentially are doing a source-side deduplication for the blocks that we send up or the fragments that we shell out, and we do that based upon age and access. And because we're doing that, we can therefore make sure we don't incur the issues that you've got around the egress fees that might be associated. We've got intelligent block mapping where we can understand first if we've got that fragment already on premises and we don't need to make the call to go and get that. Now, from the cloud, we think of infrastructure as a service, which today is focused on Amazon, and later this year we'll be also supporting Azure, but we also have SaaS protection, and specifically on Office 365. And then cloud mobility. We can take something that might have been born in the cloud and bring it back on premises, and even then take it from, say, Amazon, send it eventually over to Azure. Or we can take any workload that resides in our Veeam repository today. That can be VMware, it can be Hyper-V or Nutanix AHV or physical Windows or physical Linux. And it could be from our workstation edition to our server, and be able to, with just 2 clicks, send that to either AWS, Azure, or Azure Stack. And that mobility is really one of the key things we're focused on in expanding our coverage and going forward. Mentioned Veeam Cloud Service Providers. We actually have almost 22,000 global partners worldwide, a couple representative logos. One of them is just but one example is managing or protecting over 1 million machines just themselves. So we really have a rich partner ecosystem that we're operating with. And with that, AZ, I'll turn it over to you for the demo.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, but before we actually go to the demo, there is one thing I wanted to talk about like before. It's Veeam Cloud Tier. And they've already briefly touched that functionality, but it would be nice for us to to reiterate that and again to see what it means by it. So this is for us. This is the way to provide sort of almost limitless repository for you guys, and which is the repository which is going to be scale out. For that, we're using the tier system, and so the first tier would be the performance tier, and it could consist on a couple of simple repositories, so we call them simple, and it could be a local share, it could be a local drive or the deep appliance somewhere on premises, right? But for the second tier, well, we call it capacity tier, which is going to be somewhere in the cloud probably, and you can utilize Amazon S3, Microsoft Azure Blob, or even IBM Object Cloud Storage. And Veeam has the intelligent system that is capable of actually data from the performance tier to the capacity tier as the data age out. And so with that, you won't have any, again, no lock into the specific vendor, because we provide the system that you can, let's say, use the community edition, which we'll touch a little bit later and recover from it. We're not going to double charge you for the data going somewhere to the cloud. You pay to us once for the software, for the license itself, and then you get all the functionality. Okay, and with that, I want to share my screen and I want to show you something, because I believe that it would be interesting to see how it works. Okay, so I hope you can see the Veeam Backup application, which is application 9.5 update 4. Just made sure. And yes. Before, okay, cool. And so I want to demonstrate what I did before. So I created a scale out repository, which is, okay, it's this one. It's really easy to create, just to go with a simple wizard. You can add the local extents, or so-called local backup repositories here. Those are just, the portable drives or the local shares or whatever. You can just add them here as the extents. Then you have to define the placement policy, whether it's going to be data locality or performance. For the data locality, we obviously will try to keep the data kind of together. For the performance, we'll measure the speed and try to place them accordingly. And then for the capacity tier, I had to create the object repository, which is, for my case, once you click Add, you can select between the S3 compatible, Amazon S3, Azure Blob, stuff like that. And so what I did before that, I went to my S3 management console and I just created a bucket for this purpose. And then I pointed Veeam to this bucket and I defined the policy that I want my backups that are older than 1 day that I'm using for this scale out backup repository, that I want them to age out and to tier into the object repository. All right. So I then went to the backup jobs that I have, and I created a new backup job for my particular virtual machine that I was interested in. So I had to select it. And then on the second step, I had to define which kind of storage I would like to use. And so I just used the backup repository that I already pre-created, right? And then I had to specify the retention policy for my job, and then I had to specify the schedule. All right. I've been running this job for some time already. And if I go to the backups, if I go to the disk, I can see that for my particular job as a backup, I just go to the properties because I want to see how many recovery points I have. Okay, I've got, I think it's 12 recovery points. And you can see the data size, the duplication, compression rate, everything, and the time when the backup was done, right? So the first backup, it was done a couple of days ago, and it took me 11 gig from the repository to be consumed, right? But then what happened is if I go to the
Did we lose AZ?
We may have. Let's see. So what he's showing now is which restore point he's going to select, and then going into Amazon, and we're going to be able to see now he's going to actually power off. I believe it's going to show a website, and then we're going to be able to redirect that from a restoration point. So now he's pinging, getting reply back. He's shutting down a website now that's showing Veeam multi-cloud capabilities, confirming on Amazon. Yep, he wants to, or I'm sorry, confirming on-prem that he wants on the vSphere side to shut down the service. So now we're seeing the timeout. Can't get to that web page anymore. He's selecting a restore point, doing an instant recovery, choosing which of the recoveries he may want to do. And clicks next. He's going to redirect it because in a real situation we might not even have that infrastructure, that hardware anymore. And as soon as the restoration is complete, we're telling it we want it to turn on and resume operations. So we've initiated the recovery, taking place now. There we see the job is running. Looking at it now, we've connected up. It's very small, so the VM came across very, very fast across the network. Now we're going in. We're going to be able to see that it actually is living up in Amazon, proving that the VM, the local web page, is indeed powered off. And we're able to see now the amount of data that's actually being consumed, or the network activity, that's being representative of the blocks going across and being instantiated in Amazon. And now, in short order, we should see that we're soon going to be able to have the web access come back to us. We'll see that from the timeout window will eventually go away, because we'll have the instantiation of that virtual machine representing that website that we killed on premises has been successfully restored to Amazon. In our case, is what we selected. And now he's showing the scale-out backup repository has indeed tiered off successfully, meaning we were able to take the blocks that were on-prem, successfully put them back onto object storage and to be able to power that up and then finish our operation. And this is showing the various steps that are involved and that the network was indeed successful. And now we've got a reply back from that website, which we've successfully restored to an alternate location, and he's proving this by doing a refresh of the page. And we're back up. So that's just but one example about how we can take an on-premises backup and make it available into multiple different cloud destinations, but also do that in a very space-efficient, network-efficient, and therefore cost-efficient way without having to incur as many puts or gets across the cloud environment. What we want to do is finish up here before we take questions. Want to let everyone know that we have had, as a company, a free edition of our backup capabilities actually since inception. And now what we've got is we introduced from our former free edition, we call it now Community Edition. We've expanded the functionality. This no charge forever version of the software is good for 10 instances. Those can be virtual, physical, cloud-based, any combination of that. And the functionality is actually the same as our Veeam Backup and Replication Standard Edition. So that is essentially $900 value list for those 10 instances, and you can actually back up ad hoc an unlimited number of virtual machine instances. And there's the URL here, but if you search on Veeam Community Edition, you'll get to the page rapidly. You can deploy that either for a small size environment or for your home lab or for a migration purpose. With that, I want to say thank you before we take questions and just let everyone know that our 5th annual user conference is coming up next month. It's about 5 weeks from now in Miami, and encourage everyone to attend. If you are interested in Veeam, or especially if you're interested in becoming Veeam Certified Engineer credentialed, we're actually offering half off of those Veeam Certified Engineering classes that happen just before this event. And with that, David, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, great demo there, great save, covering the narration of that demo. Thank you, Dave. We do have a lot of questions here for you from the audience. While we do that, I'm going to pop up this poll question. And it just says, what additional information would you like about the Veeam solution? And I encourage everyone to answer that question if you'd like some additional info and exactly what kind of info you'd like from Veeam. So let's see here, Dave. First question that I see is there a time limit on the Community Edition?
No, it's actually free forever in perpetuity. Part of the founders of the company, which are still actively involved, one heads up sales and marketing, the other heads up research and development. They have always believed in the power of community. And really what made Veeam is the server administrators that eventually became virtual administrators. And that ecosystem or that community is something that the founders and the owners of the company believe strongly in. We have free editions of our monitoring solution, free editions of our Office 365, and free editions of Veeam Backup and Replication. So long answer there, but short answer is no, it is free forever.
Very nice. Another question here, with the Community Edition, can I back up to the cloud natively? Or is it just for on-premises backup?
And there's a couple different ways you could go about that. You could put physical agents into any cloud if you so wanted to. We also have the Office 365 free edition as well. So there's interoperability amongst that. And we also have the capability of our N2W product, which offers infrastructure as a service or EC2 snapshot capabilities.
Okay, very nice. Another question here. Let's see, there's a lot of questions. Office 365 backup. Does Veeam provide that?
Yes.
I guess go ahead.
Yeah, so short answer is yes. We protect Exchange, SharePoint Online, OneDrive. We actually just came out with some new change tracking APIs, which we're conservatively saying we're 20 to 30 times faster now on our incremental backups, but we've had people on social media like Twitter claim that the operation's completing 70 times faster. So the amount of scale has really been quite staggering with that. And it's a phenomenal uptake on the version of code that Anthony was demoing. That just came out January 22nd, and actually just a couple of weeks ago was our version 3 of Office 365 just got released, and the uptake has been phenomenal. For this January code for Veeam backup and replication, we're at almost 120,000 downloads now. We haven't gotten the numbers from Amazon yet, but for the feature that AZ demoed and that I tried to do the talk track over, we're already at 3 petabytes of data that has exploited cloud tier going to Azure. And we know that we're well over a couple petabytes in Amazon as well. So for a feature that's only been around or available for about 2.5 months, we're going on half a dozen petabytes already.
Wow, that's very impressive. Let's see, some comments came in. Veeam is amazing. We currently use them. Elaine said we love Veeam. Let's see, other questions here. What effort is required to launch on our corporate cloud? So if they want to get started with Veeam and backing up to the cloud, what does that take?
Yeah, so the neat thing about the software, in my opinion, is that you can deploy it in a very simple manner. I actually, on a relatively new laptop that I got, put all the Veeam components on there. And as you grow, then you can scale that off. Meaning you can have the repository on a different solution. You can do a scale-out backup repository like AZ was showing, where you might have flash and you might have hard disk drive and cloud capabilities. But the short answer is, to get started, you could initially just download the community edition, or all of our editions have a 30-day trial, and you can instantly license key convert that. In fact, if you want to change edition, the code bits are there. They're just license key enabled. But you can deploy it in a very simplified manner initially, or if you know right from the beginning that from a corporate perspective, the number of machines that you want to protect, we can have a partner work with you to figure out the best optimized kind of infrastructure and the best way to configure Veeam. We can scale out the proxies or the data movers depending on the amount of workload you're going to have, and we can scale out the repository to take advantage of any infrastructure that you might have now or be adding in the future.
Very nice.
Can I expand on that, Dave?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just 1 sec, probably. So for the demo that I tried to show, I was kind of trying you to imagine the disaster situation in your data center, and so basically you could just take in your laptop and install Veeam back here, and then using the all the cloud infrastructure right in the cloud, and run everything that you have, like your web servers, just there, and with no whatsoever infrastructure that you have on premises. And it's the additional thought about the community edition and all other editions. It's really the difference. The license make the difference. So you can start with the community edition, but all the settings that you've selected, configured, everything, they will just stay forever. And if you apply the license, you'll just get more than that. You'll have some features unlocked with it. So it's really easy to start from scratch and to scale out with everything.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, I think that's all the time we have for live questions, but there's a ton of questions that have come in for both of you all. I've put them in the queue under AZ's name there. If you don't mind replying to those and sharing the responses with the audience, I know everyone would appreciate that.
Great. Thanks so much for having
me. I'm just going to stay and reply to everything.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much, AZ, and thank you, Dave, for being on the event. A great presentation from Veeam.
Thank you.
For more information on Veeam, visit veeam.com. Also, check out the handout that's available for download right there in your audience console. And, of course, as Dave talked about, make sure you check out the Veeam Community Edition as well. Now it's time for our next prize giveaway. We have an Amazon $500 gift card going out to Sashchin Sood from Kansas. Congratulations, Sashchin Sood from Kansas. And Christian Frederick from Texas is the winner of our next grand prize. That's the Microsoft Surface tablet. So Christian from Texas and Sashchin from Kansas are the next set of winners. A lot more prizes to give away still on today's event. And now it's time for our next presenters on the Cloud Solutions Megacast. I'm now excited to introduce Mr. Steve Blow, Technology Evangelist at Zerto, and Mr. Kyle Drake, a Storage Category Manager for Data Protection at Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. Steve and Kyle, are you with me?
I am.
Yep, I'm here.
Thanks for being on the event today. Take it away.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you very much. I'm really excited. This is Kyle Drake. Being with HPE, we always are fond of working together with our valued ISV partners. So today we're going to talk about a partnership that's probably been less talked about lately, but with some new and improved integration in with our partners at Zerto. We're excited to talk about the secondary storage play. When we talk about data protection, we talk about cloud or whatnot. So obviously I'm a storage category manager. I do data protection. I also handle Nimble from the storage company perspective. But we want to kind of give the complete picture, if you will. And what I do is I always lead off with this slide here because so many people think of HPE Storage Company as, well, that's 3PAR and Nimble. But there's so much more to it, really. Our whole portfolio is built to complement the journey of your data from creation, tier one replication, to secondary storage. And secondary storage can be kind of a nebulous definition. It used to be, okay, secondary storage, I want to get it off, I'm just going to archive. But a lot of people want to do, data mining. They want to put their backup data to work and all that kind of stuff. So there's so many different partners that we integrate to do so many different things because customers have so many different layers of defined problems that they need to solve for their data. And then eventually we want to get it off, obviously, to cloud, to tape. Tape is still of value. Some people don't want to adopt cloud, or some people want to do a hybrid approach. Tape is still going to be a great cost savings for archiving for the long term. But we also have great integration in with object storage with Apollo, Scalability. We just have so many partners. But what I'm really excited about here today is to talk about the partnership with Zerto, because what makes us so valuable on the back end from my product line specifically is how we integrate and our dependency and our partnership with the software over the top. So when I talk about HPE Store Once, if you're not familiar, it is a purpose-built backup appliance for long-term archiving. It would rival the EMC data domain line, if you will. The beauty about our product is that we built it with dedupe in mind, not just for the backup, but for the restore. So when we talk about what makes our systems it's our object storage protocol called Catalyst. And Catalyst not only allows for great scalability, dedupe, and performance on the back end, and also be able to move your data all around, but it also is the DNA that allows customers to use the software that they love over the top, and then have us kind of on the back end. And that's what Steve's going to talk about, is the integration in coming with the Catalyst and how we can do a better together solution. We have a great portfolio. Starts with a virtual edition that can scale up to this slide. I'll show you our old systems went from 50 terabytes to 500 terabytes. So a lot of scalability virtually there. We have some HA capabilities coming in the summer that we're very excited about that will tie into to VMware tools and all that, where we can manage HA across the board in a virtual environment. But we can scale up to 1.7 petabytes in a single node. Again, playing with the software that our customers like, utilizing that Catalyst. So we're really excited now to be able to bring Zerto into the family and the secondary storage conversation. But of course, I don't want to steal the show here with the Store Once appliance itself. I want Steve to be able to share what Zerto can do, and I'm going to hand it off to Steve to go ahead and take it away from here.
Cool. Thank you very much, Carl. So Steve Blow here, tech evangelist at Zerto. So now I'm going to really cover some of the technology behind Zerto and ultimately where HP partnership ties in there. So a lot of you have probably heard of Zerto before. Hopefully you have. But you may well have heard of us more in the disaster recovery space, which is very much where we entered the market back in 2011, hypervisor-based replication. Obviously, the market itself has evolved a lot since then, and Zerto as a product has evolved a lot as well. And so last year we started messaging around Zerto being an IT resilience platform. I guess the key thing there was really trying to get the message out that Zerto is a lot more than just disaster recovery. And then this year, 2019, we want to enhance that message and talk really around the converged disaster recovery and backup capabilities that we're bringing, particularly in our release that's due out in 7 days, actually, next week. So that's obviously where a lot of the integration with the HPE partnership exists today. So as I said, we're now talking about more than just disaster recovery. Zerto is able to fulfill certain backup requirements as well as delivering on hybrid cloud capabilities. And what we're really doing is bringing these all under a single platform. That's the key unique differentiator here. This is not a modular platform where you purchase different elements depending on your use case. With Zerto, you get all of these capabilities in a single platform. It's not additional installs for other elements. They're all included. It still takes just a couple of hours to install, and you'll be up and replicating and able to utilize all of these capabilities at the end of that. Now, the key thing that the platform is built around is continuous data protection, or CDP. This essentially is what enables all of our capabilities. Essentially what it means is we're replicating all of the changes that are occurring on the production side to the target side, wherever that might be, in near real time. And that's done continuously, and that provides a lot of capabilities which I'll touch on as we go through. We then wrap around that orchestration and automation, and that's quite key. Again, I'll touch on why that's different to traditionally how people have done that. But this orchestration and automation is really key to that mobility story and ultimately the multi-cloud story and being able to provide seamless mobility from that standpoint. And then lastly, we have our analytics and control capabilities, which really is about enhancing your visibility of the platform, but not just from a Zerto and IT resilience perspective, but actually it gives you a lot of insight into your environment as well. Zerto is obviously operating in near real time, which means that any changes to your environment and things like that, spikes in I/O, we're going to see all of those in near real time, and actually it's a good place to go for a lot of information beyond what you would traditionally associate with IT resilience. So if we have a look at our architecture briefly. Zerto supports VMware and Hyper-V, and we also support Microsoft Azure, IBM Cloud, AWS, and we have a very large cloud service provider network as well, where we have many cloud service providers ultimately offering the likes of DR as a service out to their customers, utilizing Zerto. Our architecture is very simple. So I touched on already the fact that you can install it in just 2 hours and be up and replicating at the end of that. If we look at an on-premises environment where you're running on VMware or Hyper-V, there's just two components that are required. You have the Zerto Virtual Manager, which integrates with the Hypervisor Manager. So vCenter in VMware or System Center Virtual Machine Manager in Hyper-V. We then have virtual replication appliances that are deployed per hypervisor host. And that's really key to how we scale. We're not installing agents in any of your VMs or anything like that. We have a single VRA per host. You add a host, you add a VRA, your replication capabilities instantly scale with you. And that's why Zerto is deemed enterprise class from that perspective, because we are able to scale. Likewise, because of this capability, we can offer solutions to customers who are running, things like 25 VMs. So we scale throughout that whole range. Obviously, in public cloud environments, we don't have the same capability to access the hypervisor. So for example, in Microsoft Azure and AWS, we utilize what we call a Zerto Cloud Appliance, available in the marketplace on Azure, easy to deploy, takes just a few minutes, and essentially that is where we then perform the replication to. The key thing with Zerto and where we're implementing in all of these solutions, we're not utilizing agents. We are integrating natively into the core platform, and we're using continuous data protection. We're not using snapshots in VMware or Hyper-V or anything like that, like you would associate with traditional backup. It's continuous data protection, and the way we perform that means that there's no impact on production as well. And I'll talk about why that's a key differentiator as we go through. So one of the unique things that Zerto can deliver is really around how we protect your applications. So if you look at an application today, I'm probably certain the vast majority of your applications are not made up of a single VM. They'll be made up of multiple, and they're all dependent on each other. And what that means is where traditionally you protect each VM individually, you back up a server, that backup is run at a schedule, and it will be run, maybe your database server is backed up at 5 o'clock in the evening, and maybe your index server is backed up at 8 o'clock in the evening. The challenge you then have when you come to recover is you're going to recover all of these elements to different points in time and have to fight to get them all back consistent with each other so that they're actually usable, and the application's usable. What Zerto allows you to do is, in essence, group these in what we call virtual protection groups. So you can group your VMs that make up an application into a virtual protection group. And what we then do is we ensure that when we're performing that replication and protection of these VMs or these virtual protection groups, we ensure that they're protected at the exact same point in time across all of the VMs within there. So when you come to recover, you recover the entire application to the same point in time, rather than recovering individual VMs to different points in time and then having to piece them all together. That being said, we can still recover individual VMs out here if that's your requirement for recovery. But the real capability there is obviously to be able to recover everything to the same point in time in the event that there's a disaster for a particular application or an entire site. What we're also doing, obviously, as I said, is we're performing continuous data protection, where we're inserting checkpoints every 5 seconds. So all of those changes that are occurring on the production side are being replicated to the target side in near real time. And that target can be any of the locations, as I said. And we're inserting checkpoints every 5 seconds in there. And those are points in time that you can recover to. Now, the key thing here is rather than having to go to last night's backup when you're recovering from, say, ransomware, which is obviously a big message that we talk about or we hear in the market today, a big challenge that we all have to deal with. Rather than recover to last night's backup and lose data, have to spend a long time recovering, etc., Zerto actually allows you to recover from seconds before that issue occurred, and do that in just a few minutes as well. So it's really key to enabling ultimately what everyone wants these days, and that's continuous availability. And that's really key to IT resilience and what we're looking to deliver with our solution. So I guess that's obviously, very much what we've always delivered around disaster recovery, but we've also delivered and are delivering more around the backup use cases as well. So for example, you can recover individual files now out of any of those points in time within the journal. You can recover a file from seconds before a user deleted it or seconds before the file became corrupted, rather than going to last night's backup. That's obviously a very powerful use case. And you can do that for up to 30 days in the past. What we're adding in Zerto 7, which is a release next week, is an additional capability around the longer term retention. So we have a look at traditionally how solutions have been provided. Traditionally everyone has a backup. They back up your production environment to a backup repository. But that backup doesn't deliver you the RPOs, the recovery point objectives that you need for disaster recovery. And so you typically then have some form of replication, whether that's storage replication or another solution. But then that replication doesn't actually deliver the orchestration and automation as well. So what you then need to deliver is an orchestration tool or automation tool on top that can then deliver all of that. So you end up with a multi-point solution that can become very complex to manage, sometimes you may even have different teams managing different elements of this. What Zerto is really about doing is delivering that in a converged format. So what we can then deliver is essentially a longer term retention capability, because we're merging that backup use case with what is essentially short-term use case, the 30 days, with our journal. We can deliver what we are terming, in effect, our elastic journal. And as you can see, this is merging that short-term retention, which is that 30-day journal, with the long-term retention, where you can take points in time out of that short-term retention and store them for a longer-term period, ultimately meeting your compliance needs. And the key thing that we can deliver with this is actually that virtual protection group capability, where we're able to protect your entire application, is something that transfers across to the long-term retention as well. You can imagine recovering an application where you're recovering VMs individually from, say, 2 years ago. You can imagine that maybe some of the expertise around how the application was configured back then have gone. And actually piecing that all back together from different points in time is very challenging. What Zerto allows you to do here is, it doesn't matter how long ago it was, we're protecting that virtual protection group as a whole, which means you can recover that to any point in time within the long-term retention to a consistent point in time, meaning that whole process is sped up. We're also wrapping index and search around here. You would expect this from any backup tool, where you can actually search those points in time for files, folders, VMs, whatever it is you're looking for, and actually see the different points in time where that's been altered during the process that we've obviously been performing the protection against it. On top of that, as I said, we're obviously adding intelligent data protection workflows. Really, this is about protecting your data and ensuring that you do that in a single configuration, which is that virtual protection group. That's your protection. That configures your short-term retention, and it also configures your long-term retention. But also it's around providing you recovery workflows as well that are intelligent. And there's a lot we can do around that. As I said, we've got that journal file level recovery capability, so you can recover individual files rather than entire VMs that you would traditionally associate with DR. Now, in reality, the vast majority of your recovery is going to come from the short-term retention journal, up to 30 days, as I said. That's where most of your recoveries will come from. That's where you've got that granularity of every 5 seconds. And then we have our long-term retention capability, which is more around the compliance and auditing perspective and making sure that you're obviously meeting your obligations there. Key thing to note is, it doesn't matter where you deploy Zerto, it looks exactly the same. We've just updated our UI in Zerto 7, so when that's released next week, this is what it will look like. And as I said, this looks exactly the same wherever you install it. Zerto is really about simplicity and ensuring that it is as easy as possible to deliver this solution and ultimately IT resilience to your business infrastructure, without obviously the traditional complexity that's often been associated with the industry. I talked about our Zerto Analytics platform. It's SaaS delivered. It's optional if you utilize this or not. It's free of charge. It's included with the license. But this gives you a lot of visibility on things like IOPS, storage utilization, journal history, and where that's been past and present, etc. So there's a lot of visibility here that you can see, as well as obviously seeing any alerts and protection issues that may have been risen without having to log into your own environment. We have a fully open REST API. So obviously, we're obviously heavily integrating with HPE Store Once for the long-term retention capabilities, being able to store your long-term retention points in time there, obviously utilizing their API. Likewise, Zerto have our own API where you can then integrate this into your own tools, whether that's a monitoring tool or whether that's an operational tool, whatever that might be. We have a fully open REST API, so you can obviously have a fairly large scope of what you can do from an automation perspective there. And as I said, the IT resilience platform is really about converging all of these use cases into a single platform that has a single installation method, There's no additional elements that need to be installed, but you can get all of these capabilities off the back of it. Ultimately delivering you that continuous availability, data protection, and workload mobility across a range of platforms, ensuring that you can deliver on your cloud strategy, whatever that might be. Rather than placing your workloads just on day one requirements, you can move those workloads around as those requirements change, which inevitably they do, utilizing Zerto. And that mobility story is another great use case for Zerto. So as Carl said, we're part of the HPE Complete program, which obviously offers a lot of capabilities to any HPE customers out there to purchase Zerto with your HPE solutions. And ultimately, that's where that partnership is strongest. And obviously, you've seen that with our integration that we're offering with HPE Install Once, particularly around the repositories on long-term retention. And then lastly, I just wanted to finish. We've got our annual conference in Music City this year. So it's next month, May the 20th. And yeah, if anyone's around, wants to come, reach out to me or, on LinkedIn or have a look at our website. There's obviously a lot more information available on there. But that's it from me. It'd be good to take some of your questions now.
Yeah, great presentation, Steve and Kyle. We got a lot of good feedback here. A lot of people say they're using Zerto already and love it. So that's always good to see. Let's see, first question that came in here, they're asking kind of once you fail over a virtual machine, I mean, the application and data and everything like that are already self-contained inside that VM. Does that make sense? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, exactly. So we're performing block level replication essentially. So we don't necessarily care what the OS is or the applications are on top. As long as the platform that it's moving it to or copying it to, replicating it to, it supports that OS and application, then Zerto can support moving it and protecting it. We ensure consistency by using things like write order fidelity. So we're ensuring that write order is maintained, and we're only inserting checkpoints when that's maintained across all VMs within that virtual protection group. So yeah, absolutely spot on.
Got it. Okay, I was trying to paraphrase a question there. Forgive me. Let's see. Another question here they're asking is, how does the licensing model work? I mean, we talked about HPE, we talked about Zerto. If someone's interested in this, what would they do?
Yeah, no, very, very straightforward. So I'll let Carl chip in a minute if he wants to from a HPE perspective. But from a Zerto perspective, the licensing is per VM that's protected. We actually support one-to-many as well, so you can replicate a VM to more than one location. We only charge for the source VM. So it's literally per protected VM, nice and easy from that perspective.
Okay.
Yeah, and from an HPE perspective, right? You talk about the storage, obviously. The cool thing about HPE Complete is it's part of our product line. We give it a 1Y code, and what this allows us to do is our customers who love Zerto can actually purchase the entire solution through an HPE Complete process. So you don't have to have siloed avenues to go secure purchasing in different areas, right? So we work closely, it's all together as a team, so that customers can secure the software and the hardware together to make it an easy selling motion.
Okay, very nice.
Yeah.
And for the audience out there, I want to call your attention to the poll question on the screen there. It says, what additional information would you like to receive about the HPE and Zerto solution that you just heard about? Let's see, another question that came in. With Zerto, do you support like cross hypervisors? So can I go from Hyper-V to VMware and VMware to Hyper-V?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So obviously, very much focused on being able to, or talking about cloud on this webinar, and obviously our support for AWS and Azure, and the capability to ultimately come back out. But from a on-premises environment as well, Zerto supports exactly that replication between the two. So we do that conversion essentially on the fly. So there's no manual element there.
Okay. And what about fail back? I know that's always a challenge with some disaster recovery type solutions. Once you fail over, say, into AWS or Azure, how easy is it to fail that virtual machine or application back?
Yeah, no, great question. So with Zerto, it's very easy. What we do is we give you what we call a commit policy. So when you first perform a failover, you can define the commit policy. Typically, most users will utilize that as none. What that means is when you fail over, your workloads come up and running. You get the ability to validate, have I recovered from that issue? If the answer is yes, then you can choose to commit, at which point that's when you're committed to that point in time. Alternatively, if the issue isn't there, you can choose to roll back. Now, the key thing is when you choose to commit, we actually throw up a pop-up box. It just has a tick box in there that says reverse protection. If you tick that box, we automatically start replicating back to where you just came from. And we even use the disks that we already know exist on the former production site to use to precede that replication back. So we're only going to therefore replicate the changes that have occurred since you performed the failover back the other way, at which point you're then in a fully protected state going back the other way, and can move it back as and when you need. But literally it's a tick box, so it's as simple as that. As I said, simplicity is at the core of what we're trying to deliver here.
Very nice. And another question just came in here. Keith is asking, are the only hypervisors you support today is that VMware and Hyper-V?
Yeah, so from a hypervisor perspective, VMware and Hyper-V right now. We're looking at KVM on our roadmap, but I don't have any definitive dates at this point, nor which iteration of KVM. Obviously, there's a fair few. But yes, right now, VMware and Hyper-V, and obviously AWS, Azure, IBM Cloud, and we've got over 450 cloud service providers globally as well.
Wow, 450. Okay, very nice. All right. Well, that's all the time we have for our live questions. There's some more technical questions there for you in the queue. Thank you so much for being on today, Steve and Kyle. Great presentation.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys. Thanks.
For more information on the Zerto and HPE solution, check out the handout that's available for download right there in your console. And, of course, visit Zerto.com and HPE.com as well. All right, now it's time to give out some more prizes before I introduce our next presenter. The next set of prizes here, we have an Amazon $500 gift card going to Glenn Jornigan from New Mexico. Congratulations, Glenn from New Mexico. And another grand prize, a Microsoft Surface tablet going to James Rose from Texas. Congratulations. So after our next presentation, I've got another gift card and 2 grand prizes, so make sure you stay tuned for those prize drawings. And with that, I'm excited to introduce our next presenter. That is Mr. Shay Verma. He is the Director of Product Marketing at Druva. Shay, are you on?
Yes, I am. Thank you for having me over.
It's good to have you again. Take it away.
Thank you. So, as he mentioned, my name is Shay Verma. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and thanks for joining us in today's session from wherever you are joining us. Hopefully, we can have a great dialogue today. Feel free to ask any questions as you may seem deemed fit. Having said that, I've been in this space for about 4 years, and I've been with Druva for about 4 years as well, and have had over 12 years of experience. But having said that, I want to talk a little bit more about a more innovative solution, cloud solution that lots of organizations are looking to solve for in their journey to the cloud as they are looking for data protection solutions, and that's essentially backup, recovery, archival, long-term retention, and of course, disaster recovery. Now, one of the things that's really happening in the industry, from a legacy standpoint, with a 3-2-1 strategy that lots of organizations have in regards to backup and recovery, where you have 3 copies of your data, and then you eventually have 2 copies on different media, and then one essential copy offsite in the event of any disaster. You want to make sure you're always protected. What organizations have really gone through is that they have ended up with a hodgepodge of a multi-vendor, non-integrated, disparate solution in their data center, which pretty much involves backup software, backup servers, tapes, and offsiting capabilities with deduplication appliances in an effort to reduce their storage footprint, because data is growing at an unprecedented pace, And as a result, organizations are looking to lower their costs from that perspective. And then, of course, there is the replication offsite from a disaster recovery purpose, whether it is asynchronous or synchronous. The other thing that's really happening is now a lot of the legacy solution providers are also looking to provide a cloud solution, in which case they're essentially taking their on-premises software capabilities and providing that as a solution in the cloud, which is what we call cloud washing, essentially, because at the end of the day, a lot of organizations are leveraging the cloud from an economic standpoint, and not only at an economic standpoint, but also from a scalability standpoint as well. So in the effort of trying to move to the cloud, if data isn't managed effectively in the cloud, then organizations are also finding that they are not really getting the economies of scale that they really expected. And so the cloud washing, where you're now given a software to manage the cloud, at the end of the day, you have to manage it, you have to patch it, you actually have to service it, and you have to upgrade it as well. Now, keep in mind, as you are moving to the cloud, there are some workloads on premises, there are some workloads in the cloud, and so that gives you kind of a hybrid approach right now, which you may have. And managing all this becomes extremely complicated and cumbersome, not to mention the complexity involved. This is what we typically refer to as the chain of pain at Druva. Essentially, there are a lot of moving parts that are in motion over here, and any one part going out of sync can essentially throw your backups off, and there could be really there's very much risk in terms of losing your data. So this, what I'm referring to, is the chain of pain. And once you take that and now you multiply that with all your remote offices, it becomes extremely complex to manage. You are now ending up with multiple copies of data across your remote sites, because typically lots of organizations claim that they can actually get deduplication capabilities across all the remote sites and across all their sources, and they're not getting it. But at the end of the day, the chain of pain is replicated across all the remote sites, and now managing all the infrastructure requires the cumbersome need to manage all the hardware, the software, and of course, you now have to have management as well in all these remote sites. At the end of the day, what it boils down to is also retention and compliance. Organizations are now looking to manage their retention requirements in a compliant fashion, and also with the keeping up with regulatory needs, be it GDPR or data residency laws. Managing all that, making sure there are no data infractions is becoming extremely important as well. And then business continuity. It's no longer a question of if, but a question of when a disaster can strike in any of the remote offices, or per se anywhere in your data center. So the question is, are you actually prepared for that at the end of the day? And this is where really Druva comes in. It's truly a cloud-native solution. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but we have over 4,000 customers under our belt. We have over 100 petabytes under management today in AWS. And when I refer to the cloud over here, I am pretty much talking about AWS, even though our whole platform was built on AWS, and we're all in with AWS. We're a true cloud-native solution built for AWS. And any organization in their journey to the cloud, which is essentially AWS, we help to protect all their workloads on premises or in the cloud, or even if they have a hybrid posture. In fact, we're one of Amazon's top 5 partners, and a lot of the marquee customers are shown here on the slide as well. So the way we help to solve the chain of pain that I mentioned earlier is essentially we provide with a direct-to-cloud model. Where we have incremental forevers, which can help you reduce the bandwidth requirements. We require full copy in the cloud, and after that, it is really truly incremental forevers. There are no syntheticals. There's no multiplication of copies as a result. So whether you're on premises with all your modern workloads, or you are on VMware Cloud on AWS, or you have even a pure cloud strategy where you are running on AWS, we have the ability to protect it. We will have the ability to back it up through the Druva Cloud Platform, which is built on AWS, and provide you with the capabilities of restoring that information wherever you want, in addition to providing for disaster recovery services, where you can now boot up instances of required VMs, recovered VMs in the cloud, so that you can meet RTOs of minutes and RPO of an hour as well. At the end of the day, with all the data being unified in the cloud, we have the ability to provide you with value-added services that can help you with more intelligence around the data so that you know where your data is coming from, what can you do with the data, and how that data can then add value for you in addition to just backup and recovery as well. But one of the key things that I wanted to mention here is that the model that we have, which I highlighted earlier, is a direct-to-cloud model, which essentially states that we don't have any hardware on premises. We don't give you any software to manage. We want to really simplify this whole data protection scheme for organizations so that they don't have to worry about plumbing. They don't have to worry about the generators, for example. So it's like a utility model. You walk into a room, you turn on the lights, you really don't care where your generators are, you don't really care where the plumbing is, you just want it to happen. And that's really the vision of Druva, is that wherever your workloads are, we will help you protect it. And we will provide this as a service to you where you only pay for data stored in the cloud. Keep in mind, this is only for data stored in the cloud post-global deduplication, and so there's only a single copy ever stored in the cloud. There are no egress charges as well. Now, for those organizations that are looking for very stringent RTO, RPO requirements in terms of business continuity SLAs, we do have the ability to actually give you a quick software, which is, of course, for free, to implement on any commodity hardware, which is what we call Cloud Cache, where you can store data up to 30 days. This is essentially hot data. You can restore from the Cloud Cache immediately with LAN-like speeds. And this cache, or what we call Cloud Cache, synchronizes data to the cloud at any given point. So there's always a golden copy of that data stored in the cloud in the event your data center where the Cloud Cache is goes down. Keep in mind, if the Cloud Cache ever goes down for whatever reason, backups will continue to happen to the cloud. So there's never a chance of actually losing data in your entire strategy in terms of data protection. Now, one of the things that I highlight was is a little bit about cloud native. We are a cloud native solution offered on demand so that you only pay for the services you actually use from Druva, and that is for data stored in the cloud. So naturally, you're moving from a CapEx to an OpEx model. You no longer are tied into capital expenditures that you have spent today in the event of growth 3 years down the line. That helps in getting rid of a lot of the redundant storage, unused storage. You don't have to worry about capitalizing. You don't have to worry about consumption of data or storage that could be implemented and increase your cost, right? So you're now with an OpEx model. You only pay for what you use. Just going back to the same vision that I talked about from a utility standpoint. There's economies of scale. It's a cloud-native solution. We leverage all the services that is provided by AWS. And at the end of the day, because there's only a single golden copy in the cloud, you can really significantly reduce your storage costs, and in addition, to reduce your entire data footprint, data protection schemes cost as well. Elastic capacity, you can turn on. You can utilize the cloud as much as you want on demand, which essentially is basically helping organizations that need the scalability at the last minute, where they want to scale up or scale down, and we can help do that as well. Think of it like you're in the retail industry, and for those customers in the U.S., there's Thanksgiving, and all of a sudden they expect that their servers will be humming a lot during Thanksgiving, and so they need the immediate elastic storage in the cloud as well. And so, we are a on-demand basis, and so we automatically scale that, and then the minute you're done, you scale back, and all the data is always captured in the cloud. Increase of speed, we develop and deliver features on a very high cadence relative to softwares, where it is on a bi-yearly cadence. And so we will deliver these services, deploy them in the cloud. All customers get it at the same time immediately. And so we're a very agile organization that provides services at a very quick pace. Focus on business and making sure that you have all what you need, and we give you the value of the data that is actually unified in the cloud. And at the end of the day, global reach. Because we are on AWS, you now have the ability to deploy our services anywhere your remote offices or your data center is. You can meet the compliance requirements for that particular region as well. So if you're, say, in Germany and you require data should not be leaving Germany, because we are in AWS and we support all of the regions, you have the ability to protect it. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about the architecture at a very high level. As you can see, we don't have any hardware. We don't have any software. We leverage all the services from AWS in the top right corner. We have EC2 instances where you can do load balancing, RDS, where it has your configuration policies for backup and recovery, or even for disaster recovery. Amazon DynamoDB is essentially where we store the metadata. And at the end of the day, we always store your data in S3 and auto tier that to Glacier for cheaper costs if needed. And then finally, we also have the ability to recover VMs in your VPC so that your security posture isn't compromised in the event of a particular disaster. Support all modern workloads, Hyper-V, VMware, Nutanix, Cloud DR, physical Linux and Windows boxes, and of course databases, MS SQL and Oracle as well, and NAS filers and all of the likes of it. In terms of disaster recovery, once you have backed up your VMs into the cloud, then we have the ability to boot up those EC2 instances in your particular VPC, as I mentioned earlier. Now, that way you can meet RTOs of minutes, and you have, with a single click of a button, either fail over into your VPC, or once you failed over, you can also fail back as well quickly on premises. Now, once the EC2 instance is already in the cloud, has been brought up, or your recovered VM has already brought up, you also need to protect workloads in the cloud as well. Accidents happen, delete star.star always can happen, or region may go down. So we also have the ability to clone VPCs from one region to the other, from one account to the other, giving you the ability to then as well protect your instances in the cloud across region and across accounts as well within a few minutes. As I mentioned, once you're in the cloud, you want to make sure all your services are protected, and so utilizing the cloud in a very cost-effective manner is extremely important, and that's what we help provide with services that are in the cloud as well. Centralized management is a key thing. It doesn't matter where your workload is, on-premises, hybrid posture, or even in the cloud. We will give you a single pane of glass to manage it. Your workloads in the cloud are also protected. You can do backup and recovery for your workloads in your VPC in the cloud with the services shown on the right. We can provide DR capabilities, automatic disaster recovery capabilities, where you can have runbook execution. You have the ability to boot up across any region. You have the ability to boot up across any account as well, or you have with a single click over, fail back and failover capabilities across any region on AWS. Now, one of the things that we were talking about was cost effectiveness as well. One of the things that we do provide from the ability of reducing costs is that once your servers are up in the cloud, you want to make sure you turn them off when you're not utilizing them. Otherwise, you could end up with a very strong bill. And to do that, we have auto turn on, turn off capabilities as well. So if your engineers aren't utilizing it for desktop purposes in the night, you can immediately shut down those servers to help reduce your costs as well. And by the way, that has helped organizations to just simply recover the cost of our data protection services just by turning off features at night. Search, you have the ability to search across regions and account, metadata-based search, know where files are. You can either do a snapshot recovery in the cloud, or you can even do file-level recovery as well. And then for legal hold capabilities, if you ever want, for litigation purposes, if you ever need to hold any data for litigation purposes, we have the ability to provide immutability to your data and ensure that it is forensically sound and that is immutable at any given point with chain of custody reporting to essentially make sure that you have full log of what has happened to the data and as it resides in the cloud as well. At the end of the day, because of our mechanisms around deduplication, which is forever incremental, we always ensure only a single copy is ever stored, and we reduce your footprint by over 3.7x, which is essentially an average across our customers. But it really depends on the type of workloads, what kind of data it is, but on average we're seeing that we can significantly reduce your footprint. Because it's a perfect utilization model, we have the ability to provide you with storage that is on demand, and you only pay for what you use. There's no capital expenditures around any hardware that you buy today for the use of 5 years, and as a result, there's a lot of wasted resources that you've bought into today. With Druva, it is pay as you go. You utilize something, you just pay for that. There's no extra bills from AWS. You only pay Druva for data stored in the cloud, and you can continue with backups and recovery. So at the end of the day, if you ever come and say, hey, if there are issues, who do I talk to? Well, it is Druva. We take care of all the plumbing, a lot of the plumbing behind the scenes for your data protection capabilities, and offer this as a service, which helps in eliminating any complexities associated with that. At the end of the day, because of all these things that I've talked about, we help organizations save over 60% when compared to other solutions. There is no hardware. Global deduplication reduces your storage footprint, and the pay-as-you-go model also ensures that you only pay for the resources you're using. So it's a perfect model from that perspective, and organizations tend to save a lot of money from that as well. Now, one of the things that I'd highlight is that it doesn't matter where your data is, on-premises, hybrid, posture, or even in the cloud. We provide a single pane of glass to manage all your infrastructure data that is coming across all your remote sites, all your data centers at any given point. We give you full visibility to where that information is coming from. And once the data has been backed up in the cloud, we give you full analytics capabilities on top of the data so that data can now add value to what your organization is looking for. So with a single pane of glass, full data visibility, reduced infrastructure, and overall TCO cost reduction of over 60%, lots of organizations are looking to Druva to help them with their data protection and DR capabilities in their journey to the cloud, because this is a cloud-native solution built in the cloud for organizations to leverage, and there is no hardware or software associated with that. With that, I'll hand it back over to the team for any questions.
Yeah, great presentation, Shay. Let's see, we do have some questions here for you. I'm going to pop up a poll question. Well, I thought I was going to pop up a poll question, but I'm not. Okay, so let's take some questions here. First question that came in, they're asking about the cloud support. So does Druva run only in AWS, and does it run on, say, my AWS account or Druva's AWS account? I think you covered that, but can you kind of reiterate that?
Yeah, so there are a couple of things. If you are running workloads in AWS, there are a couple of things we can do. We can either take the data into our VPC, which is essentially AWS as well, or we can help data protection for the servers in your account, in your region, in your VPC as well, such that data doesn't leave it. So we have those capabilities. Depending on exactly what you're trying to do, we can help provide a solution for that.
Okay. And if I want to back up my on-premises infrastructure, I mean, what type of on-premises infrastructure can Druva protect? Like physical servers, hypervisors? What do you support?
Yeah, so we support all modern workloads, physical, Microsoft, Linux, virtual, VMware, Hyper-V, Nutanix, DR in the cloud, and then we support essentially all these MSQL, Oracle databases, NAS boxes, file servers. That's VMware Cloud on AWS as well. So essentially, we help provide services around those.
Okay. And if somebody wanted to get started with Druva, can you kind of walk us through the process? Is there a trial period, and how do they install it? I mean, what does it take?
So there is, the way this works is you install agents on your physical boxes or on your VMs. There is no complication from that perspective. Essentially, call us up. We can set it up for you, and you can be up and running within a couple of hours, in fact, within minutes. And that's one of the key things about here as a service relative to the competition, where you now have to get an appliance, you have to get a box and manage that. And by the way, it takes up to 2 to 3 weeks to show up at your doorstep. You can literally get started within the hour and start protecting your workloads. And that's one of the key components of this overall solution from a simplicity standpoint. We want to ensure organizations can take that and get started very quickly rather than waiting for things.
That's very nice. I like that. So no infrastructure to install on premises, no software to install on premises. Just get up and running fast. I want to call I want to call the attention to a poll question for the audience out there. That question's on the screen. What additional information would you like to learn about the Druva solution that you just heard about from Shay? Another question here. They're asking about subscription pricing models. Are there any different price breaks at different points? Like, are there different editions? How does that work?
There are 3 major editions, depending upon what you're looking to do. It's a subscription model. There are price breaks, and it's all dependent upon the amount of data that you store in the cloud. So naturally, the sales guys would probably give you a discount if you're storing 10 petabytes in the cloud. Or the larger it gets, naturally, I'm assuming the sales guys give a discount. But it is a tiered fashion. It's as a service, and you only pay for data stored in the cloud. I've seen one of the questions that someone asked was, are there any egress costs? There are no costs associated with recovery at all. We only charge for data stored in the cloud, and that is it. You get a single bill from Druva. You don't get any additional bill from AWS. Naturally, if you are doing DR into your AWS account, then that's a separate issue. But for backups, recovery, archival, long-term retention, none of that will incorporate any additional charges. It is a very upfront pricing model. You pay for what you use on a per terabyte basis, and that is it. That is all you pay Druva. You can recover all day long, and there are no egress charges associated with that. So yeah, that I think answered a couple of questions over there.
Yeah, very good. Another question here. Josh was asking about granularity in regards to the OneDrive restore. Can I restore files to a different user? That might be too technical for our discussion.
But we do have granularity to OneDrive, and yes, permissions are also restored.
Okay. All right. Well, great. Great presentation. Thanks so much for being back on the event today, Shay. Good to have you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Appreciate it.
For more information on the Druva data protection solution, of course, visit druva.com. Also, check out the handout that's available for download there in your audience console. It's the definitive guide to enterprise data backup and recovery architectures, and it covers how to compare on-premises to hybrid, to hosted, to cloud native. So it's a very comprehensive guide. Make sure that you download that and check it out. I'm going to leave up the poll question that's on the screen right there for you to answer in regards to the Druva presentation that you just saw. And while I do that, I'm going to announce our final prize winners on today's event. So we have an Amazon $500 gift card going out to David Lieberman from Pennsylvania. Congratulations, David Lieberman from Pennsylvania. We also have grand prize number 4, another Microsoft Surface tablet going out to Steve Reichner from Wisconsin. Steve Reichner from Wisconsin. And another Wisconsin winner, Wisconsin's lucky today, another Surface tablet going to Adam Dobrinska from Wisconsin as well. Congratulations, Steve and Adam, both from Wisconsin. I don't know how that happened. We use a random generator for our prize selection, so Wisconsin just got lucky today. If you aren't one of the prize winners, make sure that you join us for an upcoming event. We have a lot of events upcoming. In fact, we've got Containers EcoCast coming up next week. Here we go. Sorry, trying to bring up the slide for that. Containers EcoCast coming up next week on April the 16th. Make sure you join us for that event next week if you want to learn more about containers, especially containers in enterprise technology, in the IT data center, on premises, how to store persistent data for containers. It's going to be a really great event. Also, If you'd like to register for other upcoming events, visit events.actualtechmedia.com. All of our upcoming events are on there. You can register for any of them that you'd like to. And if you are a potential sponsor for our events, you'd like to present on one of these events, you can email connect@actualtechmedia.com to chat with us about what you might want to present to our audience. And with that, we've reached the end of today's Cloud Megacast event. I got a lot of great feedback coming in here that everyone enjoyed the event. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. We got a lot of great feedback on Twitter as well. So I love hearing that feedback that you enjoyed the Megacast. Maybe it was your first time being on the Megacast, and I'm glad that everyone enjoyed it, especially the live demos and the great presentations. So thank you to our sponsors, and thank you to everyone out there in the audience who participated in today's Cloud Megacast. We'll see you on our next event. Have a great day.